It's nearly 12:30 in Glasgow, and this is the final summary video for the course Understanding Modern Business and Organizations. I'm saying this with a degree of sadness, but also with a sense of accomplishment, not mine, but primarily the accomplishment of the participants. So I could say that there are not too many questions really raised this week. It was more comments, so I am reflecting on comments and answering some of the questions that remained. First of all, I would like to say a few words about the role of governments. There was lots of feedback and various comments about blaming managers for the financial crisis and what happens in terms of governments, because governments should obviously play a role in that. First of all, I would like to mention that emphasizing the role of managers is as opposed to the role of governments, because the role of governments is said many times. On the other hand, management is not limited to corporations, so there is also management in the governments. A comment from Malcolm Rutherford about this is that perhaps we should include the governments more in the reasoning behind the crash. Certainly many of the concepts such as intellectual courage, competence, doubtful knowledge, shallows seem especially relevant here. They apply at least to governments as they do for corporations, and that the regulations by governments should be also included. Jagadish Vehgal adds to this that banks are not money producers or money makers. They just hold and invest people's money. And obviously he says that we are getting no interest for the money we put into banks, but we are paying high interest if we borrow. So he closes the loop and says that we are actually paying for our own money. And a slightly more direct formulation by Neil Semple and Ronald Yeo was, I disagree with Mintzberg, that the financial crisis was down to a management failure. There were systemic, regulatory and political failures as well, the bankers, and that playing by the rules certainly relates to government issues. Of course, government do play their own role in the financial crisis, but if we only look at the financial crisis as the crisis of economy, and we only relate to this to what governments are and were doing, that is a very one-sided view. So if you remember in the first week, I never said that you should accept Mintzberg's argument. I wanted to pose a provocative argument which is very different from the usual one, so that I would get this kind of excellent comments and conversations that we have received this week. There was one interesting comment about a particular knowledge domain, the knowledge domain of economics, from Brian Jarrod. He says that it's nice for economics not to be blamed for everything. Economics always seem to be turned into fall guy for whatever goes wrong with the world. He quotes Jonathan Porritt, who says that the economics can be defined as a severe form of brain death. And he continues that it's politicians and business leaders who choose which economics policies are followed, and guess who influences them? Public speakers, business advisors, and opinion leaders. Of course, these are all true. What is interesting is that there are obviously other kinds of economists who would argue for a very different view. For example, a friend of mine, Katsuhito Iwai, a Japanese economist, developed the model of disequilibrium economics. And the argument there would be that the natural state of economy is that it is not balanced. It is not in equilibrium. Of course, this opinion is not particularly popular, and having talked to several Nobel Prize winners in economics, many of them argue that Katsuhito Iwai should have got the Nobel Prize a long time ago, but he is not getting it, as no government on earth would want to hear that the natural state of the economy is that it is not in balance, because that would mean that you cannot promise stability to your voters. There are several people mentioning communityship looking back to the first week of the course. And again, Malcolm Rutherford is asking what options do we have, and he is questioning whether communityship is necessarily a better option, or that everyone should be a shareholder in an organization, what would then happen, and so on. The idea of the communityship is not necessarily that every organization should be a community, and a similar argument would apply to, for example, the Shamrock organization. When you look into the more balanced view of the society, and particularly of the world of business and organizations, the idea is that there should be more variety of ownership structures, of organizational structures, how things are carried out. So Shamrock organization is not an organization structure which should replace all the current organizational structures. It could be another one which could be useful for some organizations in some circumstances. There could be other organization structures that we do not see or think about yet. There were also a couple of interesting comments going back to another argument by Mintzberg, which was not to hire MBAs for managerial jobs. And for example, Jacqueline Holdsworth says that MBAs are not for crisis. However, would you put an MBA straight away into lead management position? But otherwise, she says that she sees nothing wrong with MBAs. And obviously, an MBA should go through an apprenticeship in management before getting into a high position practitioner. Helen Tatham is also mentioning a similar topic, whereas I find that some managers are clearly motivated by greed, not all are, and obviously that there are other drivers by other managers, and of course this is all true. Now, when Mintzberg argues against the MBA, it is not against MBA as a form of education. So I had a huge hustle when I was the director of the management development program here at the university, and in the starting plenary talk I said that nobody should expect to become a manager by finishing the business school or graduating from the business school. And I said that it is not limited to our business school, it applies to any business school in the world. Business education does not produce managers. That's the essence of it. So the MBA produces financial analysts, business analysts, all sorts of people with functional knowledge. And exactly as the participants of the course are mentioning, yes, they need the managerial experience also developed, a very good knowledge of the company in which they become managers and so on. So the only problem is when you automatically put an MBA to become a manager. I have a very relevant personal experience here. I was reviewing recently a paper which was suggesting that, so the title was something like, what could business schools learn from university hospitals? And basically the essence of my comment is that nothing. Because university hospitals are real hospitals with real patients, real illnesses, real cures, real treats, real operations, and we cannot have a business running inside the classroom. So the other way is to make links with companies, that students go out to the companies and so on. So that's a different issue, but what what the university hospital can do is to produce a corporate university within the university setting, and this is not really possible in business. That links very much to the notion of the MBAs. Another topic that was very frequently mentioned, and it is kind of obvious, it is the topic of ethics, and and there are lots of comments. One that I particularly liked is coming from Y, who in a reply to a previous comment said that, do you think that the men at the top, the leaders, knew and understood what the men at the front, the traders and the salespeople were selling? Do you think a moral compass is missing? And I love very much this metaphor. So some moral compasses are either missing or they are badly miscalibrated, because obviously the ethical moral considerations are much less important than the profit considerations. Stefan Wheat talks about the Mintzberg's comments on CSR, and he mentions that we are not talking anymore about philanthropy, not looked at much in the recent times, and maybe we are turning blind eye on these things, and that's obviously not necessarily the case. And what we are trying to do very often is to emphasize the bad examples, but emphasizing the bad examples usually provokes others to emphasize the good examples. And I think that what we really have here and what we need is to pay attention to this kind of balance. Many are also mentioning that the profit is the purpose of the business, so that it should not be considered the wrong thing if corporations go for the profit, and it is obviously perfectly true, and no one argues against this. And the tricky thing is that we should not identify the short-term profit with the profit. So if you just think about movies like the Wall Street or the Pretty Woman, what those incredibly wealthy people were doing there. They were buying up companies, taking them apart, firing everyone, selling the bits and pieces from the company, and earning huge amounts of money in the process. I have seen this kind of process myself. There was someone, actually two people, who bought a company by using a loan from a bank in the same country. They sold all the warehouse material. They have sold several buildings. From that, they paid back the bank loan, and they then sold all the machinery, obviously fired everyone, and they made a huge profit within a couple of months. There is one small thing, that the company didn't exist after that. So it is not about that there is any problem with the profit. It is when you sacrifice the future of the company for the short-term profit, what can be really damaging. There was a great appreciation for the input from those who were involved in the development of this MOOC, and what I would really like to do is, and my colleagues obviously agree with me, is to extend this to the participants of the course who contributed greatly, and as my moderators were saying, that they filled the gaps when we have been unable to answer, and often beaten us to the punch. There is an additional comment from Adrian Benitez that I also had the opportunity to see the points of view from my colleagues in different parts of the world, and that is one of the greatest value of the co-production of the content of MOOCs like this one, that everyone gets involved, that there are lots of examples, and discussing the examples clarifies the thinking as well. I would also like to summarize my own learning points from this course. First of all, I really hope that everyone learned from this course as much as I did. If I'm going to run this course again, which could happen maybe in a year's time, but not very soon, obviously there are things to fix, particularly in week 1, to bring in this kind of structure that I have used in the following 4 weeks, so weeks 2 to 5, and that's probably the main thing. And obviously we will need to do some revision of the tests. What I was incredibly happy about is 2 things. I have taken 2 large risks with this MOOC. One was that I have developed with Zoltán Baracskai this structure that I have never seen anywhere before, and so this up-to-date concepts followed by a trigger concept, followed by upcoming concepts, and then that the participants of the course are contributing bits and pieces of the content, and I think that it worked out fantastically. The other thing that I have never seen is that it is a big picture MOOC about the world of business, not a particular skill or a particular competence for which we want to provide some material. I am very happy to acknowledge that this was a very, very hard course. So congratulations to everyone who got through it, or if you got through at least part of it. But I did not think that the point is to make the course easy. I thought that it is to make it useful, and I think that it was useful from what I see from the comments by the participants. I am very, very happy with the amount of learning that happened, because I see the fuzzy picture of those big pictures behind the comments, and that makes me really happy. To conclude, I would like to, one more thing before I forget. If you like the course, and if you would like to see any kind of updates and further work in this area, then please go to Facebook, and I will send in the email my official Facebook page and like it. In that case, you will receive any further updates about the course and all the related work that I am doing. And finally, I would like to say thank you to the whole team who worked with us, who contributed to this course, who made all of it possible. Thank you all very much. What are the factors that shape business and organizations today? What part do knowledge and technology play in this? What is the responsibility of decision takers when they cannot influence the effects of the global environment? Could understanding these topics help us make sense of phenomena such as the global financial crisis? As Mintzberg says, is it the crisis of economy or the crisis of management? Join us to find out.